Okay, so I'm going to do a rerun of a talk I recently gave at the SALA-37 Conference in Venice, Italy. The title of the talk is Where Are the Sanskrit Speakers? And the focus of this presentation is the deep dive into the census data that I've been doing over the past probably since about 2017. So the reason for doing it is because I wanted to see what information I could generate out of looking at the census data to see if it could be helpful in understanding not necessarily where Sanskrit speakers are, but where the aspiration to identify as a Sanskrit speaker is located at each census. And what you do through a diachronic study across several censuses is find that there are quite dramatic shifts in the numbers of people and where they're located at each census. Thousands of people just, or in some cases tens of thousands of people just vanish. Or they kind of apparently migrate to another part of India. So we'll look at the national, state, district, sub-district and village levels of India in the course of this presentation today. Now, for those of you who don't know anything about my research on this topic, this article in the Bhasha Journal, it's a free open access journal. So in the first issue, volume 1, number 1, I have this article, Sanskrit Speaking Villages, Faith-Based Development and the Indian Census. And in the introduction to that article, I give a comprehensive overview of this whole research project, all the publications I've made regarding it. So today I won't talk at all about linguistic analysis of spoken Sanskrit. This focuses explicitly on human geography and demography, essentially. So the reason for this is that I wanted to conduct an empirical study locating the tokens of self-identified L1, L2 and L3 speakers of Sanskrit in the Indian census data. So L1, 2 and 3 is their code for first, second or third language. And this is part of my Imagining Sanskritland project, which more broadly explores the moral horizon inherent in the biographies of Sanskrit and yoga as instruments of becoming. And what I mean by that is that Sanskrit and yoga are both used in similar ways to create sort of imaginary worlds, imaginary settings where that link back or attempt to link back to some mythical, romantic notion of a former golden age. And so many people believe that through doing yoga, through living some sort of yoga lifestyle, and through speaking Sanskrit, which can be appended to a yoga lifestyle, or yoga can be appended to a Sanskrit lifestyle, that this will help to create some sort of substantive transformation in the world. And so that's why this project is about documenting the shared projects of cultural nostalgia and utopian aspirations to imagine and build better worlds. So there's a strong kind of development rhetoric which is embedded within the discourse of those who imagine a Sanskrit land. Some of the more dominant narratives which you'll find are the idea that the world's oldest language is Sanskrit. This is not true. Or that, and you can see how this edificatory potential, this developmental potential that Sanskrit can unify Bharat. Bharat is basically the Sanskrit name for India, you can say. Or at least the one way to think about it is that Bharat is kind of an imaginary layer that is placed over the top of India. For instance, there was a Hindu nationalist ideologue several years ago who made the statement after a very notable rape case occurred that rape doesn't happen in Bharat, it only happens in India. So Bharat is kind of like this sacred space within the profane space of India. And as you can see in the bottom one, Sanskrit can become the language of the masses in rural areas. So there is a drive to get village people to basically transition to speaking Sanskrit as their nominal language, their language of day-to-day activities. And so this is thought that it will help to kind of help create this better world. But it doesn't really consider the fact that people already speak their heritage language and that the imposition of Sanskrit might not really gel with their linguistic human rights. And to expand out from the Indian village, there is an aspiration, at least among some promoters of the spoken Sanskrit, that everyone in the world should read, speak Sanskrit, and that would just basically make the world a better place. And that Sanskrit has the potential to replace English as the next global lingua franca. So these are some of the aspirations. This map, or these two maps, help us to understand in a visual way aspects of how Sanskritland is imagined. The map on the left is from the 2011 Indian census data and the Language Atlas of India. And it shows the darker the orange color shows the districts that have a higher percentage of Sanskrit speakers to total population. The map on the right is from the Survey of India, and it's the Bharatasya Rajanitikam Manachitram, which is basically the Sanskrit map. It's the 7th edition of the Sanskrit map of India. So instead of there being English on the map or Hindi or some other language, they made it a Sanskrit version. Okay, Sugi. So some of the key points that bear out in this presentation is it's important to remember that the data is empirically flawed, yet it helps to imagine Sanskritland, locate affiliation and aspiration. And importantly, it helps me to strategically plan future research. So if I can find out where specifically like the districts and even sub-districts and even villages where higher percentages of people identify as Sanskrit speakers, then I can make my next trip to India more streamlined. Now, the Sanskrit data is unreliable due to the rules of enumeration. So what this means is enumeration is what happens when the census data is collected. It is enumerated. The problem is that the rules of the census clearly define that when the enumerator goes through the schedule of questions, when they get to the language questions and they ask, what languages do you speak? If anyone identifies as a first, second, or third speaker of Sanskrit, then the enumerator is not allowed to question that. So essentially, people get to self-identify as to what language they speak. So in a sense, all of the language data for all the languages of India is in some way compromised by this fact. We have to kind of take a lot of it with several grains of salt, especially the Sanskrit data. And one of the main reasons that people identify as Sanskrit speakers is because due to the Constitution, it states that if a scheduled language returns fewer than 10,000 tokens at the census, then it runs the risk of having its scheduled status being removed, and it just becomes another unscheduled language. So prior to each census, various groups in India who admire Sanskrit and wanted it to be promoted, they will go around and they will tell people, make sure you nominate Sanskrit as your first language. So we have groups that explicitly urge people to artificially inflate the actual numbers. And so this is a second reason why the data is compromised. Nonetheless, we can use it to show where these people were, or where they were located at the last census, or any census. So, now the third important point is that Sanskrit, the Sanskrit tokens, no matter if it's L1, L2 or L3, are about 80% linked to L1 to 3 Hindi and L1 to 3 English. There's a very strong correlation between these three languages. No matter if it's Sanskrit is the first language, Hindi the second, and English the third, or the other way around, or any of the combinations, it's always around 80%. Geographically speaking, there were more Sanskrit tokens returned across the Hindi belt, so the Maidan, the plains of North India, where the Hindi languages are spoken. So it shows that there's kind of a North Indian phenomena, in a sense. And more Sanskrit tokens were returned in urban versus rural areas. And this is borne out through a diachronic study of multiple censuses, which shows there's been an increasing shift from rural to urban. So the idea, if you recall that previous slide where it said Sanskrit can become the language of the rural masses, it's going the opposite way. So now a very important point to note is that the official terminology used in the census is total persons. Actually, there are three categories, and you see them in some of the slides. There's total persons, and then there's total males and total females. And then there are two more categories. There's rural persons and urban persons. So the total persons is the count of combined the rural and urban persons into the total persons. But this doesn't mean Sanskrit speakers, and the census enumerators are aware of this. It means persons who return Sanskrit as their mother tongue, or as you can see in the image at the bottom, the number of persons who return the language as their mother tongue. So they're aware that there are flaws in the way that the language data is collected through an individual's ability to self-identify. And this has gone back. You can find comments of this in the earlier censuses, the census reports from 1881, for instance, or 1891. Tsugi. Mother tongue has been the official term used in most of the censuses, except you can see at the bottom a parent tongue, language ordinarily used, language ordinarily spoken in household. These were used at 4 other censuses instead of mother tongue. But you can see that mother tongue has been the predominant term used at most of the censuses. In 1951, bilingualism was introduced, so they started recording 2 languages, and since 1991 they've been recording 3 languages. And this has multiple issues, because some people speak more than 3 languages in India. So that's one issue. Anyway, if you want to find all of this data, at least since the 1991 census, you have to go to data.gov.in or censusindia.gov.in, and you need to find, at least for the mother tongue tables, you need to find the C series, social and cultural tables, and find table C16 for the first language. And then you can also find the C17 and C18 tables, which give you the second and third languages, and then also include statistics on age and sex. There are other tables which can be found that help to create more nuance. But it's also important to note that the earlier censuses used different tables. So, for example, in the 1991 census, the C16 table was actually the C7 table. And then if you go back even further, you have to figure it out. Some basic kind of methodology is that once you have the Excel spreadsheet, you download it from the Indian census website. So you can see here, this is the table. This is the state table for Rajasthan. Rajasthan has the state code of 08. So this is the C16 statement for Rajasthan's mother tongue. Right? And so basically what you need to do is open the data tab, select filter, and then you can select, for example, column G, and then filter for Sanskrit, and then it will just give you all of the Sanskrit data. And then if you want to put it in descending order from the highest number, it will, you just say click on column H for total persons, and then you'll have it in a matter of seconds. Actually, it doesn't take that long. And then you'll be able to see which district it is in. So you can see there that there's the table name, state code, district code, sub-district code, and then the area name. And so then that becomes a way to figure out across the state, or any state, where the total number of speakers of any language are located. And you can see how, at least in the image provided here, that there are far more Vagdi speakers in rural areas of Rajasthan than in urban areas. So once you've got your data, you can clean up the spreadsheet, and then you can export it as a CSV file, and then you can use a program like QGIS to make a map. And so then you just add it as an attribute table, and you add a shape file into QGIS, and then all you need to do is just join them, and then you can make a map. It's kind of easy once you know what you're doing, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't come without errors or corrupted data, or it just doesn't work for some unknown reason. But generally it's straightforward. So this information, this next section is quite interesting. This goes back to that 80% correlation between Sanskrit, Hindi, and English. So this data is from 2011, and you can see in the top row, these are the total person counts for Sanskrit as an L1, L2, and L3. So obviously if someone identifies as a L1 speaker of Sanskrit, then their L2 and L3 will be something different, like Hindi and Punjabi or something. Right? So you can't be an L1, L2, and L3 speaker of the same language. That's not how it works. So you can see that 24,821 tokens were returned as an L1, and L2 1.2 million, and as an L3 you can say 4.1 million. Now if you compare that to the second row, which begins with Hindi as an L1, it's 422 million. Now of those 422 million tokens, 323 million of them identified as second language as English speaker. And then of them, so the combination of L1 Hindi and L2 English results in 3.5 million L3 Sanskrit tokens. And so then if you compare the L3 column, you'll see that that combination of L1 Hindi, L2 English results in 88% of the total L3 Sanskrit tokens. Now that's significant, right? So, what's going on? Right. So if we flip that table around and start with L1 Sanskrit, so there you can see the totals. You can even see the male female totals there in this table. What you notice is if you just focus on the Hindi English totals for L2 and L3, you'll see that it's around 70 to 80% correlation with L1 Sanskrit. So no matter which way you mix it, shake it up, spread it out, line them up, there is a roughly an 80% correlation. So it was 88% in the previous slide, and in this slide we can say it's basically 80% average, maybe it's even higher actually, with L1 Sanskrit and L2, 3 Hindi English. So Jiri is a kind of infamous Sanskrit-speaking village in Sarangpur Tehsil Rajgarh district, Madhya Pradesh. In 2015, I spent 1 month in this village, which has no running water or electricity, in the very hot summer of 2015. And I did field work there. I've written several articles about it and made a few short films as well. And you can find them on my academia, my ResearchGate, on OSF, on my website, Yogascapes in Japan. You can find the films on YouTube as well. So, yeah, and if you want to know more about, the sort of the linguistic anthropological kind of angle into Jiri particularly, then that's where you should look. So Sarangpur Tehsil, according to the census, has Jiri in Sarangpur Tehsil. Tehsil is basically the Hindi word for subdivision or subdistrict. Sorry. So you have in India you have the nation, then the states, then you have the district, and then the sub-district. And there are also other categories. So there are divisions, which are combinations of districts. So one division could have 4 districts in it, for instance. Then there are blocks and village boundaries and town boundaries. It's a little bit kind of complicated, but so anyway, Tehsil means sub-district. So Sarangpur Tehsil is the sub-district, a sub-district within Rajgarh district. And you can see here on this map that where Jiri is approximately located, and it's within the Malvi homeland. Now Malvi is what many people refer to as a Kheti Bhasha. It's a farmer's language. It's kind of similar to Hindi. It's in the western chain of the Hindi families. Hindi is split by linguists into Eastern and Western. So it's more similar to Gujarati and Rajasthani languages. It's just kind of a more simplified version of Hindi, basically. I won't go into it. If you want to explore it, you're free to do that. So the first language of people in Jiri, anyway, is Malvi. And one thing is it's, for example, all the older women, they probably didn't get much chance to go to school, and they don't speak Hindi. They basically only speak Malvi, but everyone else speaks Hindi on top of Malvi. So this is one of the maps I made using QGIS, importing the census data. And so you can see that Madhya Pradesh has got the grey dots in it to differentiate it from the other states. So this is at the district level across India. And so you can see, if you focus on the red square, in the middle of the red square, that's Rajgarh district. And you can see that it has a total persons of only 61 tokens were returned for Sanskrit as a first language. But if you see the other districts within the square, start with the dark one, the black one. That's actually in Rajasthan. It's in Jalawar district. And if you recall that Excel spreadsheet image from the previous slide, in which it said that had the language Vagdi in it, this is one of the predominant Vagdi speaking areas of Rajasthan. But for some reason, it returned 921 tokens at the 2011 census. There's one reason for that. There's a village, much like Jiri, called Ganoda in Banswara district, that there's been a concerted effort to do a similar thing and transform it into a Sanskrit-speaking village. I haven't been there yet. But you can also see that Shajapur, Bhopal district, and Indore, and also Hoshangabad district have significantly more tokens than Rajgarh district. And in fact, if you look at, I'll show you a slide later, but the sub-district that, so Sarangpur Tehsil, the sub-district in which Jiri is located, only returned 18 tokens at the census. But yet the media will tell you that the village is filled with native speakers of Sanskrit, or everyone can speak Sanskrit there. So. But you can also see, we'll come back to this map, but you can also see some of the other districts in the surrounding states which at least fit on this zoomed in map. So you can see Nashik had 442 in Maharashtra, and Nagpur. Pune had the highest count in Maharashtra, and also all of India. Jaipur, Ajmer did well in Rajasthan. You can see Kheda in Gujarat. In just outside Delhi, Ghaziabad, and then Kanpur had one of the highest, I think it's the third highest. And then Sitapur district. We'll focus in on Sitapur district actually in a little bit for good reasons. And Sultanpur district, also nearby. Patna, Dhanbad in Jharkhand. Yeah, so. Now, Hindustan Times. The Hindustan Times first published this article in 2008, which was around about the time that I first came across this article and thought, gee, I'll have to go to Jiri one day, see this for myself. But you can see that at least this screenshot that I took, it was published in 2019. And I actually happened to notice that they published this article almost, you can see how it was first published in September 21 and then republished October 29. So it seems that roughly around the same time of year they'll republish this article just to kind of reinforce this nostalgic narrative to keep the romance going about the Sanskrit-speaking village in Madhya Pradesh, which is described as a lost world rediscovered as India's own Jurassic Park. that's been recreated carefully and painstakingly, but lives a precarious existence, cut off from the compelling realities of the world outside. 10 years have been enough for the Sanskritization of life here. So Sanskritization is a complex term. It implies several things. But here it's talking about the transition from a non-Sanskritic kind of lifestyle or worldview or use of another language into that transitioning to speak Sanskrit, becoming more, in a sense, Brahminical, and all these things that come with embedded in the idea of the Sanskrit way of life. Some might think that's a good thing, others might not think that's a good thing. That's fine. You can see here this photo, the graffiti which is on the wall behind these three well-turbaned men. It says, starting in the top left, Vadatu Samskritam, Mama Bhasha Samskrita Bhasha, which is, speak Sanskrit. My language is the Sanskrit language. That building no longer exists. When I was there in 2015, it had been replaced by newer buildings. Fun fact. Here's a video, we'll just let this play.
Welcome back. There is a unique village in Rajgarh district of Madhya Pradesh where almost all the people always converse in Sanskrit. Children here are determined to teach Sanskrit to people who they meet. Villagers initially resisted the language, but now after 3 years, they simply can't do without it.
A unique education in a unique village. Jhiri in Madhya Pradesh's Rajgarh district has renewed an old custom, and people here have taken it upon themselves to popularize Sanskrit. So for the past 3 years, Sanskrit has been the medium of education at all schools in Jhiri. Now the children speak fluent Sanskrit, even outside the school. In fact, they want to make a career in the ancient language.
क्या नाम है आपका?
मेरा नाम सत्यनारायण है।
आपकी क्या उम्र है?
हम एकादश वर्ष से
किस कक्षा में पढ़ते हैं?
हम पंच कक्षा में पढ़ाने।
तो बड़ी होकर क्या बनना चाहते हैं?
हम ज्येष्ठ भूत्वा संस्कृतस्य अध्यापिकां भविष्यामि।
It's not just children. Even the grown-ups now speak only in Sanskrit.
संस्कृत वदामि बहु आनन्दः आगच्छति।
क्यों?
अस्माकं भाषा अस्ति तदर्थम्।
3 years ago, these villagers formed the Vidyagram Development Committee, which decided that everyone, regardless of caste or religion, would learn Sanskrit. Now, even those who may not know the technicalities of the language still speak fluent Sanskrit.
एक अनपढ़ बालिका यहाँ की जब उनको व्याकरण सिखाने लगे तो मुझसे पूछती है कि दादाजी आचार्य महोदय मैम विभक्ति पृच्छति वचन पृच्छति का वचन अस्ति एक वचन द्विवचन बहुवचन यानी वचन पृच्छति अहम न जानामि का वचन अस्ति हम तो भाषा जानामि.
For the residents of this village, Sanskrit is not only a language, but also a medium to become more cultured and civilized. And this has helped them to a large extent in achieving the goals of social harmony, development and prohibition.
With Kumar Shakti Shekhar from Jhiri village in Rajgarh district, Akbar Mujahid for NDTV.
This is a short clip I made during my film clip.
ट्रैक्टर मध्ये उपविश्य चलति वा?
इसका फोटो
चलाम.
एक इधर भी ले
कीजे तत्र भवति. ताड्यति एषा ताड्यति.
मारती है
माईसा नमो नमः.
भवन् मत्ता अस्ति सा. अस्तु चलति इदानीं.
I won't play this video, but you can find it on YouTube. It's about 10 minutes long. But it's the first episode I made about trying to find the village. It was really hard to find, and no one knew where it was. Okay, a bit of data, information about the census of India. It's been conducted 15 times, every 10 years, beginning in 1872. And the first complete census was in 1881, which was the first time that language was collected. These are all of the total person counts for Sanskrit from every census except 1941, which was a completely botched census. One of the main reasons why it was botched and the data, especially for language, is not available, is because they tried to be innovative and kind of do without census enumerators and just allow people to fill in the forms themselves, basically, which led to a complete failure of that census. Also, the 2021 census didn't occur because of the pandemic and because it was the first time that India was hoping to digitize the census, and that just caused untold problems. To put it into perspective, at the 2011 census, there's something like 8,000 or 600,000 villages, plus 600,000 plus villages, and so the logistics are huge, and they had 2.7 million enumerators working on the census of India in 2011. So it's a huge effort to get all this data collected, and it takes, once the data is collected, it then takes several years. So for example, this data for the language stuff was not published until 2018. So I waited 7 years from the 2011 census until this data became available for me to actually look at. The 2021 census has been rescheduled to occur after the Lok Sabha elections in 2024. So we'll see if that happens. So you can see here, beginning in 1881, that more or less the numbers stayed pretty steady in some sense, around 1,000, and then it starts to rise up from 1961, 1981, and then 1991 it just goes through the roof. And there are probably a few reasons for this. 1991 was when India's economy opened up to the outside world. So India had this protectionist kind of closed economy, and then so a lot of imports started flooding in, and all of this, India's relationship with the outside world then caused India to become kind of reflexive in trying to figure out, who we are as a nation, only 4 or 5 decades into being independent. And so there was a huge kind of nationalist push going on around this time. And so it would seem that in and of itself is probably the main cause for this huge rise in people identifying as Sanskrit speakers. So let's focus in for the next few minutes on 1991 and try and figure out where these speakers are located or were. So you can see here that the 1991 census, as I mentioned, this is the language table, mother tongue table, but it's not the C16, it's the C7. And so this gives you the total person counts, and I've cleaned it up. I didn't include the male-female counts, just the total for rural and urban. Total persons, total rural, and total urban. And so you can see that Hindi had the highest number with 337 million, Bengali then with 69 million, and then you have to scroll all the way down to number 67 to find Sanskrit, which only had 49,736 tokens, which is only 0.006 of the total population of India. But interestingly, if you see the blue column, you can see that the rural percentage, turns out to be 86%, with 42,833 tokens. So at least in 1991 it was sort of the language of the rural masses, at least some of them. So we can dig a bit deeper and find out which state they came from by going from the C7 Part C1 table to the C7 Part A2 table. So this shows you that at the state level, state and union territory level. So India had 49,733, and 90% of them, interestingly enough, came from Uttar Pradesh, 44,847, which is quite remarkable in many ways. And so you can dig a bit deeper and you can go find the district totals for the state of Uttar Pradesh in another document, and you find that in table 31 that Sitapur district returned 89.5% of Uttar Pradesh's state total, which is also 81% of the national total, with 40,116 tokens. And 37,224 of them came from the rural area. So that helps us kind of dial down at least to figure out that figure. Unfortunately, I haven't managed to find this document yet, which it will help me to know from which sub-districts in Sitapur district these tokens came from. I have a hunch, and I'll share that with you in a minute. I can at least tell you that in Sitapur district in 1991, there were 2,314 villages registered. So all those 40,000 tokens came from amongst that amount of villages. So let's look at Uttar Pradesh. This is a mostly complete map of Uttar Pradesh at the 2011 census. And the darker, you can see that around Kanpur district, there's just a couple of districts that I don't know why they didn't appear on the map. I'll fix that up later. They don't have many numbers, so it's not really that much of a problem that it's not there, but it would be nice if the borders were there and was filled in. So yeah, basically the darker the color, the higher the number of tokens that were returned in each district. So you can see that there were several districts that had, a kind of higher amount than all of the rest. Some had, none, or maybe one. Actually, that's why those districts are not there, because they didn't return any, which is annoying. Anyway, the top 5 districts were Kanpur Nagar, which is Kanpur city, and then Sitapur district. So we just mentioned Sitapur district had, at the 1991 census, it had 40,000. By 2011, it only had 722. So did everyone die, or did they just, move somewhere else? Sultanpur, Ghaziabad, and Saharanpur are the top 5 in Uttar Pradesh. So this is Sitapur district. And Sitapur district is located just north of the state capital of Lucknow, and it's in a Kannauji speaking region in Uttar Pradesh. And if you compare the data from 2001 and 2011, you can see that. So if you recall, the state total for Uttar Pradesh was something like 44,000 or something. And 10 years later, it had reduced to 7,000. But Sitapur district still provided more than 50% of the state total, just in this one district. And this one district in particular provided more than half of Sitapur districts. So we could speculate that maybe in 1991 it was Biswan district that provided most of these those 40,000 tokens that came from Sitapur district. It's difficult to know without getting the data. But if you compare that to 2011, you can see that the state total more than halved, and the district total, declined in multiple ways to only 722 tokens. So either there was a mass exodus or a mass die-off of Sanskrit-speaking identifying people in Sitapur district. So the data for the Sanskrit tokens that I collected out of all of these Excel spreadsheets for 2011 at least. So there's 36 states and union territories, and 31 of them returned at least a token, and that's 86%. There were 469 of the 640 districts returned a token, that's 73%, and 1,293 of the 5,924 sub-districts returned tokens, so that's 24%. So you can see how when you get down to it, at the sub-district level, it becomes more distilled. So that helps us to kind of identify quite specifically parts of India where people who identify as a Sanskrit speaker were located. If you recall that first map I showed you that had the districts highlighted in orange from the Language Atlas of India, this is the table that adjoins that map. And if you try not to get worked up about the annoying typo, for the total count for India, should be 24,821. The point is to highlight the top 10 and how that comprises 80% of the total token count for 2011. So you can see Maharashtra, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka, West Bengal, Goa, Himachal Pradesh and Jharkhand make up the top 10. And you'll see that, most of them are, you can say, in North India, the Maidan, apart from Karnataka. So if we compare the top 6 states from 2011 with their results from 2001, you'll see how they shift around a fair bit. So Maharashtra only had 408 in 2001, and that blew out to 3,802. Bihar similarly only had 754, but it blew out to 3,388. Uttar Pradesh, however, went from 7,048 down to 3,062. So did a lot of people leave Uttar Pradesh and move to either Bihar or Maharashtra? Similarly, Rajasthan didn't perform as well as the other states. Madhya Pradesh increased its figures considerably. Karnataka kind of, stayed the same, you could say. So this is another map that I made. This is the state totals, persons. The darker the color, the higher the number of tokens returned. And so this mirrors the table you just saw, with the last two tables. So you can see Maharashtra, the highest number, Bihar, second, Uttar Pradesh, the third, Rajasthan, fourth, Madhya Pradesh, fifth, and Karnataka in sixth place. And you can see the other states, how they don't do as well, especially in the northeast. No one likes to identify Sanskrit speakers in the northeast. And there's only one Sanskrit speaking person in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which I didn't put on there. Now if you compare that to the rural data, you'll see how it shifts to the north, and Bihar takes the first position in the table. And basically southern India doesn't have much going on there at all. But then if you compare the rural to the urban category, you see how Maharashtra comes back, Bihar drops off completely, and Tamil Nadu and Karnataka reappear. And you see how there's kind of a shift to the west as well. But you can also see how more states have a higher number of urban versus rural tokens as well. Okay, so we'll go from the state level now down into the district level. And so the top 5 districts in 2011 were Pune in Maharashtra, Paschim Medinapur in West Bengal, Kishanganj in Bihar, Kanpur Nagar in Uttar Pradesh, and Jalawar in Rajasthan. You can see how 3 out of the 5 were rural. And now this map shows you where those top 5 are located. So number 1 is Pune in Maharashtra, 2 is Paschim Medinapur in West Bengal, and then Kishanganj is number 3 in Bihar, the northeast corner of Bihar. And then Kanpur Nagar is number 4, and then number 5 is Jalawar in Rajasthan. So this map just zooms it in so you can get a better look at what's going on at the district level. So you can see these bigger patches. There are some patches where not all the states returned a token, and that's why there's kind of these bigger gaps in some places. So multiple districts didn't return a single token, so their border has not been included. So. Now, coming back to that map I showed you earlier, and just highlighting how we looked at Sitapur district and Kanpur district as well as number 4. Where I want to go to now is a sub-district level, and I want to focus on one particular sub-district in Hoshangabad district in Madhya Pradesh, which is not far from the famous Sanskrit-speaking village of Jiri in Rajgarh district. So this is the top 20, I think, sub-districts from across the nation. You can see that Kanpur had so from within the Kanpur Nagar district, the Kanpur sub-district had the highest number of tokens. So even though Kanpur Nagar was the 4th highest district, it was the highest sub-district. And even though Pune district was the highest district, Pune city sub-district was the 2nd highest sub-district. And then Digalbank in Bihar, Pachpahar. It's difficult to know what sub-districts these, the ones that are an area not under any sub-district, and they have the sub-district code of 99999. They're probably some like municipal corporation or something, and I'll have to like dig into that data to maybe hopefully find out what they are. So you can see how there's a state code and then a district code and then a sub-district code, right? So state code for number 9, the state code is Uttar Pradesh, 27 is Maharashtra. What is 29? I forget what 29 is. So I can figure out what the state is and then what the district is, and then from there. So we'll look at state number 23, which is Madhya Pradesh, and then the district 449 is Hoshangabad, and then the sub-district 3618 is the sub-district of Piparia. Now this is a sub-district map, and I haven't finished it, but I thought to compare it. You can see Kanpur sub-district there is number 1, and then Pune city is number 2. So I'll fill that out. Right, so this table, there's a bit of color on it. So what it does is it shows you districts and sub-districts within districts in Madhya Pradesh. So you can see Madhya Pradesh returned a total persons of 1,871, and that there were more urban tokens than rural tokens. The top district is Rajgarh district, and you can see how it only returned 61. And Sarangpur Tehsil, which is where the Sanskrit-speaking village of Jiri is located, only returned 18 tokens, and all of them were rural. So we might surmise that there were 18 people in Jiri that identify as a native speaker, mother tongue speaker of Sanskrit, but I mean, the linguistic reality is that that's not even close to being possible. Nonetheless, that's what the data says. So we'll focus in on Hoshangabad district, so the green one. And you can see how Hoshangabad district returned 524 tokens. Most of them, 496, came also from rural area. And of that 524, 490 came out of one sub-district, the Piparia sub-district. So that's where we'll focus our attention. But you can also see, it's interesting how the Indore district and the Bhopal district, they both return the predominant amount of their tokens from the urban areas. So the sub-district of Indore, so basically Indore city, returned 201 out of 204. And similarly, the Huzur sub-district is basically Bhopal city, returned 242 of 249 tokens. So this is Hoshangabad district in 2011. It has 8 sub-districts: Sioni Malwa, Dolaria, Hoshangabad, Itarsi, Babai, Sohagpur, Pipari, and Bankedi. So Piparia is what we're focusing on. So if you compare the percentages that this Piparia district provides for the sub-district, it's 91% of so when you dig deeper into other tables from the census, what you find is that there is a village called Bankabedi, and it has a village code 487164. Now, I've looked in multiple tables and multiple village lists and directories in several government official databases, and I cannot find this village or this village code. in particularly in Piparia sub-district. I don't know what to think about this or what to do about it. I've made inquiries and no one's responded, so for now I'm just going to present it for what it is. According to the census, this one village of Bankabedi returned 449 tokens. Now that makes up 91% of Piparia sub-district's 490. It makes up 86% of Hoshangabad district's 524 tokens. And it makes up a considerable amount of the state total of 871, providing 23% of the tokens. So it's a curious phenomenon, Piparia, and particularly Bankabedi, the village of Bankabedi. If anyone knows where this actually is, please contact me. So yeah, I provided links there to the Indian census link to the district and the Piparia Tehsil village list. Another interesting fact is that the data for Hoshangabad district returned a scheduled tribe of the Agariya Gond Arak. 126 Sanskrit L1 tokens were returned in Hoshangabad district. And I haven't included it, but if you look at the Sanskrit, the L2, L3 Sanskrit for the scheduled tribes in the district, it also presents a really kind of fascinating picture, which I hope to focus on in future work. But there are thousands of tribal people, scheduled tribes in this district particularly, which identify as second, third language speaker of Sanskrit. So for whatever reason that is. Now coming back to this Bankabedi, there's this GIS, it was gismp.nic.in. So it's this government Indian GIS thing where you can search for villages, and it will pull up, where they are. So I searched for Bankabedi in Hoshangabad, and there was only one Bankabedi that turned up, and it wasn't in Piparia Tehsil. It was in Sioni Malwa Tehsil, and that blue mark roughly locates it on the map. Similarly, you can see I've showed where the Piparia town is roughly located in Piparia sub-district, and so I don't know where Bankabedi is, but you can see that the rural count for Bankabedi is 400. Well, the sub-district returned 490 tokens, and 485 of them were rural, and the village of Bankabedi returned 449. So overwhelmingly they came from apparently this one village, but I don't know where it is exactly. But it's somewhere in Piparia. It's somewhere in Piparia sub-district anyway. Okay. So I'll wrap it up and just reiterate that the data is empirically flawed, yet it helps to imagine Sanskritland in a new ways and locate affiliation and aspiration, and to help to strategically plan future research. So as I've pointed out, I've got really specific places in which I can focus in on, and instead of wandering around India chasing rumors from the internet that have been copied and pasted into 500 websites with lists of Sanskrit-speaking villages, I can probably rely a bit more on the census data, at least, to find people who speak Sanskrit or not. Doesn't matter to me. I'm chasing more the rumor, the myth, than any sort of linguistic reality. Yeah, the data's unreliable for all the reasons I've already mentioned. people are urged to nominate it, which artificially inflates the figures, and that's to help retain Sanskrit's scheduled status. And some of the more important things are that L1 Sanskrit is 80% linked to L1 to 3 Hindi and English, as we saw in comparing the combinations. There's a strong correlation between Hindi, English, and Sanskrit, which points to a few things. And I think if we compare the urban shift as well, so there's not only are the Hindi belt has returned more tokens, but also in urban areas. So what do we find there? In urban areas, we find people who are probably more literate and competent in speaking English for multiple reasons. And so then that possibly gives them more access to other media outside of India, and to maybe more of an international kind of, backwards and forwards of identity, and possibly that then leads people to become reflexive and to in some positive way to consider some national identity, and within that Sanskrit becomes an instrument to project a national identity beyond possibly even any sort of caste, religious or ethnic kind of boundary, and possibly that's why you find people who speak Hindi or identify as Hindi and English speakers. There's a class aspect to it as well. People are in the cities possibly are more educated, more financially viable. A lot in my field work, I met lots of people who were retirees, empty nesters, who had turned to speaking Sanskrit as a new hobby. So there are multiple ways in which this you can think about that. So yeah, the Sanskrit phenomena is an interesting one for lots of reasons, and while this has helped me to kind of figure many things out, there are still multiple. It actually kind of opens up just even more questions, and my forthcoming book on this topic might come out next year or in 2025, I don't know yet. Anyway, thanks for listening if you made it this far, and if you've got any questions, let me know. So see ya.